Bartlett Committee of the Whole meeting for December 3rd, 2013. I call this meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Ahrens, absent. Kammerer?
Here.
Carbonaro?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Ranke?
Here.
Shipman?
Here.
President Wallace.
Here. First item on the Committee of the Whole meeting is under Finance Committee, Chairman Ranke.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have tonight 2013-2014 six-month budget review. I'll turn that over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Trustee Ranke. And as of October 31st, it marked the six-month point in our fiscal year budget, which begins May 1 and ends April 30th. And typically what we do at this time of year is review our five major operating funds, including the general fund, our biggest operating fund, the water and sewer fund, the parking fund, and the golf course fund. So I'm just going to go right through the funds tonight, and I'll be going through the charts and giving you some details on what the major highlights are in each of the funds.
Hey, Jeff, could you scooch it a little bit closer? It's a little echoey. Thanks.
I have a cold, too,
Yeah,
so I'm kind
like
of struggling. I apologize.
Well, thank you for sticking it out. We appreciate it.
We'll start out with the
need an
general
interpreter? Valerie could interpret?
Let's start out this evening with the general fund, and we'll start out with revenues. And as you can see on the top line there, all the way to the far right, revenues are trending about $573,000 over budget, which is a good thing when we're talking about revenues. We anticipate to end the year at $22.2 million in projected revenue, and we have a budget of $21.6 million. So some of the highlights of our revenue budget, we're seeing sales tax trend about 1.8% over budget. We're getting, again, very close to the 2008 levels where we've eclipsed the $2 million mark in revenue for sales tax. So we should be around $2,020,000 in sales tax by the end of the year, and that it's continued to show some slow but positive growth in that area. State income tax is the largest revenue source that has struggled mightily over the past 4 years. And believe it or not, we are now back probably to 2007, 2008 levels, where we're seeing $95 per capita based upon our population. And that's what we typically generate in state income tax. So that's trending right now about 4.4% over budget. State income tax is now only about 2 months behind for some reason. Don't know why, but they're only 2 months behind in remitting their monthly allotments to the village. Back during the recession years, 2008, 2009, we were almost 5 months behind in getting state income tax. So that helps, 2 reasons, generate additional revenue and helps with cash flow. So we're seeing kind of a bounce back there, which is a good thing. The real estate transfer tax, we're trending about $200,000 over budget on the real estate transfer tax. I think for the past 4 or 5 years, we budgeted about $285,000 for this revenue source. We could come in about $550,000 now this year, so it's a pretty substantial bounce back. Nowhere near the days of 2005 or 2006 where we used to generate about $1.6 million a year for this revenue source. But we're seeing, again, a slow but steady increase over the last couple of years, and I think that's good news. The state replacement tax is trending about 8.6% over budget. That is basically a sales tax for out-of-state retailers. And again, I think that might be somewhat of an indication that the economy might be bouncing back as we're seeing additional dollars generated from that revenue source. Moving on to expenditures, one of the things, again, that we try to do is hold the line on our budget and try to come in under budget on many of our line items in our operating departments. And you can see in the middle there, or to the far right, each department and where they anticipate to come in at. A positive number represents an under budget amount, and a negative, or with brackets, represents a department that may be over budget at this point. But overall, expenditures are anticipated to come in $575,000 under budget. So that's a good thing. So when you look at the combination of our revenues being over and our expenditures being under, we're in a position again this year to generate about a $1.1 million surplus. So that's good news. That what that means is that we'll maintain our fund balance and keep the general fund in a healthy position going forward and into next year's budget season. So at this point, if the board wants to stop me and maybe ask any questions that you have on each individual fund, or I can keep moving along. I'll move along.
I have a question for you, Jeff.
Yeah.
On, the transfer tax, is that an indication of, the bulk of those funds come from people exiting Bartlett, correct?
Yes.
So you're saying at the highlight that was $1 million or something?
1.6 million.
And what year was that approximately?
About 2005, 2006.
And was the fee the same at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Is it also, do we also get revenue if somebody moves within the city limits? There's no
No.
transfer tax, right? So I don't know if the increase in that fund is a good thing, unless we're counterbalancing it with people moving in.
We're seeing more homes sell.
Yeah.
And when our stamps go up, and we're seeing more real estate move, and what we want to see really is for the home values to increase, not only to generate revenue, but that it helps our property tax base. The home values still are kind of steady. I mean, not steady, but kind of flat. We'd like to see them rise. We're not really seeing too much of that.
The 1.8% sales tax increase is the greatest news, I think. That's fantastic. Good, thank you.
Moving on to the water fund, really one major revenue source here, and that's water sales. What we're seeing is consumption and sales trending about 2% over budget. That's a good thing. I think the summer months, again, were good. We've seen some consumption, and that really is something that's bounced back from the recessionary years. Last year, we had 12% increase in consumption. Because of the drought, didn't expect to see that again, obviously. That was just a one-time anomaly. We don't see that every year. But we're still trending over budget. We didn't budget based upon 2013 consumption amounts. We decreased a little bit because we knew that we were generating excess revenue because of the drought. But still, we are trending a little bit over budget. And on the expense side, again, we continue to hold the line. The best news that I could give the board here is that for the last 2 years, the city of Elgin has not passed along an increase to their water rates. So what that means is, typically, at this time of year, we may be coming forward with a proposal to increase water rates, basically because we have to keep up with Elgin's water rate increases. We're not going to need to do that this year. And what that means is next year we'll be in that good position also not to really see our expenses increase too much. And some other operating line items such as commodities and utilities and whatnot in the water fund are trending under budget. So all in all, we're seeing a projected year-end surplus of about $422,000, where we budget a surplus of $143,000. So some good news there also. Sewer fund, again, really one major revenue source, and that's sewer sales. It's a very consistent revenue source. Excuse me. We're projected, again, to be right on budget. If consumption stays where it's at, we'll continue to generate the amount of revenue needed to cover our operating expenses in the sewer fund. On the expense side, what we're seeing is expenditures are coming in under budget. Two reasons primarily. Our capital outlay budget is coming in a little bit under budget due to good returns in some of our bids, and our utility budget is coming in under budget due to some decreased utility costs for running our pumps. So all in all, we're going to have a projected year-end surplus of about $100,000, where we did project to have a deficit of $338,000. And that deficit, we use reserve fund balance to cover some of those capital outlay costs, where money's been set aside in future years, but we're not going to need to do that this current year.
So let me stop you there. The
Yeah.
capital costs then are driving the deficit in the sewer fund.
Capital outlay costs,
Okay.
such as a generator, there's
was
some
a
other
new
items
pump?
in there. The pump is capital projects, yeah, where we've issued a short-term loan to fund that. So that's really not a part of this analysis, but you saw that in the capital budget.
Yeah.
And that's funded through other revenue sources besides sewer sales.
Now, do you see this changing from year to year? I mean, are we going to see less of a deficit in the future? Or is it something that we need to catch up with?
A lot of times we'll have carryover, these capital outlay projects, and that's sometimes why you see that deficit. But the sewer fund really hasn't been in a position to generate a deficit in the last 2 or 3 years. We've pretty much broken even or generate a little surplus at the end of the year. So,
Okay.
Do these, Jeff, do these new food manufacturing outfits create a hard time budgeting the sewage? I mean, with no real understanding of how much sewage they're going to be flushing through?
Right at this point, we don't know what we're going to be, we have our standards, what they're supposed to be performing to us. But as far as the quantity, we don't know what they're going to be bringing at us, so it's a real wait and catch up situation with us.
We're keeping an eye on that, I would hope.
Oh, most definitely. We're monitoring that all the time, and we're evaluating it as new businesses come in, as they're being planned, as they're going through.
Thank you, Mr. Kester. Yeah.
okay, we'll move on to the parking fund. Parking fund, somewhat of a simple fund where really our only revenues are generated from the fees that are generated from the parking meters out at the lots. We had a budget of $230,000, and our projected year-end revenues coming in at about $269,000. You might remember back in 2011, the board raised the fee from $1 per day to $1.50, so that's helping to generate some additional dollars in the parking fund. Operating expenses are also trending a little bit under budget also. One of the things that occurred in this year's budget with the parking fund is we had to pave Bartlett Avenue East lot for $70,000. We had funds set aside in reserve to fund that. So that, again, is why you see that deficit budget when we approved it last year, but it's trending a little bit better than budget at this point. So, looking at the golf course fund, the golf course got off to a little bit of a slow start this year weather-wise. Total revenues you can see on the left include the golf course, the restaurant, banquet, Midway, and we had a total budget for all of those specific departments of a little over $2.4 million. Our projected year-end for all of our revenues are about $2.2 million. So we're about $161,000 under budget on revenues in the golf course fund. On the expenditure side, though, one of the things that the golf course has continued to do, understanding that we do have a hard time generating revenue and creating additional rounds at the golf course, is to cut back on its expenses, and they've done that for many years. So we're projecting to be about $130,000 under budget in the golf course. So unfortunately, when you look at our total revenues of about $2.2 million projected at year-end and our total expenses of about $2.46 million at year-end, we're running a deficit in the golf course of about $197,000. That hasn't been really uncommon for many years. What we have to do now, going into the spring, right now you'll see there's obviously no rounds of golf being generated, so we're going to start having a little bit of a cash flow problem. And by the end of the year, what will have to happen is the golf fund will have to do a short-term borrowing from the general fund, which is called the due to do from. By the end of the year, the golf course will owe the general fund a certain dollar amount, probably in the $300,000 range. When the golf course opens up again, starts generating revenue, it's paid back, but it's just the cash flow cycle. And right now, the golf course really doesn't have any fund balance or reserve to help cover that cash flow issue. So it's something that we have to get our arms around of, and we'll continue to work through the budget. It's been somewhat of a problem for the last 3, 4, 5 years, so we continue to work through it.
Jeff, when you say it's been a problem, do you mean at our golf course or in the industry?
Oh, the industry in total is just having a real hard time generating rounds. And when we have bad weather, it just really hammers golf courses because their margins are so tight. You know, to try to meet budget expectations, you really have to have perfect seasons of golf weather to meet operating expenses.
Well, I agree with you, Jeff, that we do have to get our arms around this, and I'm concerned that we've been running a deficit for the last couple of years, and I don't think we're going to solve that tonight. But is there a way that staff can start examining ways that we can solve this sort of perennial deficit that we have with the golf course? I mean, clearly it's something that the residents want, but at the same time, it's going to be an enterprise fund or it isn't. And right now it is an enterprise fund and we're subsidizing it. So there has to be a way for that enterprise to flourish. And I know that that's something that we've sat down, we've talked about extensively, and I know it's not easy to solve, and I know it's a golf industry-wide problem, but there's got to be some creative ways that we can help balance the budget.
More signs.
Maybe, I don't know.
I think-
Well, we've talked about additional advertising
Yeah.
Okay.
at the golf course, and I knew the mayor and myself and Valerie talked about that some months ago, about additional advertising and things that we can do to help pick up different types of revenue at the golf course.
Bob, how many weekends out of 52 do you have event banquet-wise? Out of 52 weeks in the year, how many weekends are you booked at the golf course? Just curious, because maybe that's
For banquets, probably 75% of the time.
Okay.
It's the off-season. It's January, February, and March that tend to be a little light as far as activities are concerned, and they work really hard to try to fill with parties and smaller events and that type of thing in the off-season. Come May 1st for sure, May through November, that's a real busy wedding season type thing. And then December, of course, you have a combination of usually a few weddings and Christmas parties and those type of things. But January, February, March, and part of April, that's a challenge for us as far as the weekends.
part of the deficit. Is that including any of the renovations that were recently done?
Any capital outlay or capital programs are funded through a capital projects fund. We don't have the money to fund it through the golf course.
If I remember, go ahead.
This was a discussion that we had earlier. I'm not going to take credit for this idea, but if we were to be able to put up a dome like they have over there at Bensonville, where you can actually go there and hit a bucket of balls inside, you think that might bring in some extra revenue? Would people come out for that?
The only place we could do that would be out on the practice range itself, and so the proximity of the range to the clubhouse would be a challenge, but it's certainly worth looking at. There's a few domes sitting around out there. They tend to be up 12 months a year, though. They tend to be operational 12 months a year.
Very
and
costly to put
so
up.
that the cost of putting them up, taking them down, those type of things are eliminated. But, yeah, I mean, we'll look at everything, trust me.
Okay.
You could do it in the rain, too.
The other option the board talked about some months back was video gambling. The nice thing about video gambling is the golf course would receive the benefit of getting the village's portion of the revenue along with what it generates, at the golf course, too. So it could generate anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000.
One of the things that I recognized, Bob, over the last 3 or 4, actually a couple of years, I remember Top Golf being open and nobody was there. And over the last few years, you can't even get in there on a Friday and Saturday night. It's just packed. So I think some of the younger crowd is kind of moving to that, I'm not going to walk around a golf course, I'm going to sit and hit balls and be able to eat while I'm playing type of an atmosphere. So it's hard. But another thing, to get off the strategizing, weren't the banquet facilities pretty profitable last year?
They were, and they have been in previous years. We've seen a little bit of a slowdown this year from what I'm seeing for some of the projected year-end revenues.
Well, nationally, weddings and big banquets are down 10 to 20%. And unfortunately, we saw the same thing this year.
Okay.
It's a national thing. People are cautious spending money on big ticket items like the weddings and that type of thing, and we're seeing numbers at the weddings, dropping too a little bit. In other words, people are coming in saying, well, we're looking to have 175, 200 people, and they show up with 125 or 130. That's not unusual. People are not traveling from out of town to get to these functions. and a variety of other reasons. But nationally, they're down about what we're down from last year to this year.
And where do we advertise for our banquets, Bob?
We do a lot of online. We do a lot of bridal magazines. We do a couple of the big bridal magazines, and also online. Everything is almost being done online right now with the brides. It's a one. They sit in front of their computer and they decide at that point 3 or 4 venues that they're going to go see and check out and that type of thing. And a lot of it's done just that way. Mary, our banquet coordinator, is on an email 7 out of 8 hours a day, conversing with brides and potential clients and that type of thing. So everything right now is through email and online, and some publications that we are in that are important to be in the Chicago area.
Just one final comment. I know at one point we had discussed the fact that the Midway House seems to be a pretty good revenue generator when there's good rounds. And the lowest hanging fruit would, for me, it would be to enhance that as like a deck opportunity for golfers where they can, hang out in a covered environment. They don't have to go all the way up to the clubhouse to sit down and have something decent to eat. So I know we discussed that, but I know this isn't a problem-solving session, but that's something to look into.
Certainly worth looking
It
at,
doesn't
absolutely.
seem like it would be that expensive to conform that place. Sure we're all willing to swing a hammer.
Well, and certainly running up into the budget cycle and the strategic planning cycle, I would really appreciate from staff a number of different options, things like the debt that we can explore. Certainly, I have no objection to spending money if we're going to see a good return on our investment, so that we can eventually wipe out these, structural deficits and make some money or at least break even. Thank you.
And I think that's the key, Trustee Ranke, is proactively trying to find ways to make this thing profitable, because we're continually hearing people that don't benefit from a golf course screaming, and that's justifiable. And so we need to figure out a way to make this really a nice, fun, profitable place. I don't know if we're open for discussion.
That really concludes the presentation I had for this evening, going over the 5 operating funds. The only thing I'll conclude with is, at this point, the department directors are working feverishly on their upcoming budgets, and we'll be bringing that back to you in March for our budget deliberations.
I thought you were going to say to fix the website. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you for toughing it out.
Nothing further for finance, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman Ranke. Next item on the committee report is Planning and Zoning. Chairman Kammerer.
Thank you, President Wallace. Do you have anything you want to say?
I got to read this. Yes. The village has adopted certain rules of decorum board meetings by ordinance, including procedures for its committee of the whole meetings. Those rules provide that during committee of the whole meetings, only matters on the agenda for that meeting will be discussed, and members from the public will be given an opportunity to be heard on each committee of the whole agenda item only after the presentation of the matter of the village by village staff, and or where applicable, the petitioner and its consultants are present, and after the board has had a chance to discuss the matter among themselves. This evening's board will take up recommendations from the Bartlett Economic Development Commission, known as the EDC for short. The EDC recommendations and the minutes of its 4 meetings are quite extensive and are not expected to be concluded this evening. So the discussion of the EDC recommendations will likely be continued and further discussed at 1 or more future committee of the whole meetings. Accordingly, the matter of the EDC recommendations will not be open for public comments this evening. Comments from the public, including members of the EDC who may be in attendance at these committee of the whole meetings where the EDC recommendations are presented and discussed, will not take place until the board has had an opportunity to complete its review and fully discuss the EDC recommendations among themselves. We thank you for coming this evening. If the reason you are here this evening is for the presentation and discussion of the EDC recommendations, and thank you in advance for your patience in waiting to be heard on this topic. If you cannot attend the future date, you are welcome to submit your comments in writing. The EDC recommendations will take place under the Planning and Zoning Committee, which is chaired by Trustee Cameron. And I would add that that's just we know the EDC has put a lot of time into this. This was a lot of reading, and it's really well thought out. There's unbelievable ideas in here, and the only reason why we're doing this is just as a matter of time restraints, and we're not going to try to slice and dice this up this evening. So,
thank you, Mayor. The Planning and Zoning Committee has one item this evening, and that is the presentation of the Bartlett Economic Development Commission recommendations. And I would ask the staff to summarize the EDC report and recommendations. So take it away, Jim.
in one breath.
Thank you, Trustee Kammerher. First of all, I would reiterate what the mayor said. The ED commissioners deserve a thank you for their diligence and thoroughness in completing this task within really what was a long summer of meetings and public review. They left no stone unturned. They asked for and received input by the business community, residents through the in the community coming to the meetings, and also input from written input. People contributed various stages of the public hearings, the public meetings. All the minutes, as you said, are all contained. There's probably 500 pages of minutes. They reviewed previous downtown studies regarding our TIF district, the downtown plan, the Arts in Bartlett facility plan presentation that was given a number of years ago. And as a result, they came up with 23 initial recommendations, and they added a 24th one, which was similar to what this gentleman was talking about wayfinding signage in and around the town. As I stated, the meeting started in June 10th and went on through various public presentations in the subsequent EDC meetings. Not going into the minutes, I know you've all read those, and there's a lot to absorb. I'm sure you'll get well-versed in it when we get through this. Long story short, the EDC came up with 24 recommendations. They categorized them in 3 different stages. Short-term actions, 0 to 6 months was the time frame recommended. Medium time frame of medium time frame action of 6 to 24 months, and then more longer term actions of 2 to 5 years. Not going to go into all of the recommendations, but just some of the things that they covered were additional signage, additional events, enhanced decor, working with the chamber, working with the business community, the Heritage Days people, working with Metra, the Elgin Community College, the CMAP grants that might be available to help community planning. Those are more of the short-term types of things. The medium-term action, working with the downtown on wayfinding signage, the additional corridor work, creating a TIF district in the downtown to help the downtown area, working, as you stated before in your previous work on the traffic study, improving traffic patterns in the downtown, making it more walkable, Tourism and Arts Commission, wayfinding signage on 59, and then more of the longer-term, bigger actions in terms of encouraging redevelopment in some key parcels in the downtown, the AT&T structure, dealing with the split platform issue, and pedestrian plazas in the downtown area for gathering or hosting events. In all, the EDC spent a lot of time, a lot of diligence. They were very patient in the information that they received. They thought it out. The commissioners are here, the ones that could make it tonight. And if there's nothing else, I'll try to answer any questions, and we'll move on from here.
It's your meeting. You're chairing, so.
Is there any questions from the board?
I would have a couple of questions for you, Jim. This is really extensive, and I've got little pages flipped over in a lot of the notes and a few things, and I noticed that one of the commissioners, a couple of them are here. Very impressive. I would guess our job is to, one of our tasks is to try to whittle this down and say, okay, of these items, what's the biggest bang for the buck? What's the lowest hanging fruit? Are there any things, what I wouldn't mind discussing this evening, are there any things in the short-term activities that we could push right now and say, hey, this seems like something we can jump over and get some results for their work, or at least moving on to the next board meeting. So I would suggest that we discuss a few of those things. Some of the questions that I had, Jim, were the you talked about the CMAP grants. Did we look at, when reading through the notes, it was a little vague as far as what I read as to what those are available for. It seems that it has to be certain circumstances and certain level of planning that they'll come in and provide a grant for. Does that overlap into our traffic study?
It's more in the neighborhood, and Tony Fraden, our ED coordinator, did most of the research on those, and those tended to be planning assistance grants for marketing in the downtown area, marketing in close proximity to the train station through the business community. They use transit-oriented development as a term, a planning term that they will provide funds for. The RTA also has a similar program where you can get money to help you create a plan to help market the downtown and what, like an area study, if you will. And there's obviously with any grants, there's a cycle that you have to meet and a deadline. And we have applied for things in the past for our zoning ordinance from them. They didn't fund it. It didn't have much pizzazz. But if you combine, typically these types of grants, if you combine it with, we worked with Metra and with our Chamber of Commerce, and you get a couple of entities involved in it, it has a little more sparkle, if you will, in terms of how they review it. But they tend to be marketing and planning studies for the downtown area.
I think that's perfect. I mean, you have to play off the fact that there's commuters that are using their service that are directly impacted by the study that they would be doing. I wouldn't think, that seems like really low-hanging fruit to me if there's money out there.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that. I mean, if there's grants, let's get them.
At least try.
At least try. But just so I can clarify and understand, if I'm understanding what your plan is for right now, it's these, kind of let's go through these first 9 items.
Yeah.
Discuss them, see if we can move some action on those first 9 items at least, and then maybe digest and take on the next 11 and then the final 4 at an additional meeting? Is that what you're saying?
That sounds great, yeah.
Okay.
And I just brought up the ones that caught my eye. I can tell you the ones that caught my eye was the grants, if that's possible. And I read some of the notes, but thank you for clarifying that, Jim, because it seemed to me like that would be a no-brainer if we put our heads together with the chamber and the residents and the village. I think we see the Park District has the ice skating rinks up all around all the time. Those don't seem too hard to put up, so the ice skating rink at Bartlett Park, I think they do put one up there, don't they? No, they used to. Oh, they used to?
They do it on the community center parking lot. They have
Yeah.
an ice skating rink down there.
If they put one up at Bartlett Park, I'd be remiss not to say I'd be upset if they stopped doing it at the Jim Pavilion Center, because that's where my son walks over to, but got to do both. The other one that I noted here was the holiday decor throughout downtown, including Christmas lights. I mean, these things seem... I know we used to go to, I don't bring this history up, but we would travel down to a suburb in the south just for their downtown display. And we would go down just to see that when the kids were small. I don't know if that's really expensive, but...
Would we have to call it holiday lights?
No. Not while I'm here.
Paul, how
so those are the things that caught my eye. I don't know about the rest of the board.
Well, let me just gnaw on the downtown holiday lights for a second. Paul, how feasible is that? I know some of the lights downtown have outlets, some work, some don't. Is that something? In other words,
We have looked at that numerous times. There was one year they had talked about music downtown, piping music in out there. We looked at that quite extensive. There's not enough power to put street lights or decorative lights around the poles on there. There are some that have outlets. They were all put up. Most of them all have outlets. There's not adequate power to supply those outlets with power. We would talk about reamping and rewiring the whole entire downtown area if you would want to do the lights or the holiday lighting. Right now, the way they're set up, they would not be adequate to accommodate that.
Is there a way to do a limited rollout, or it's really none or all?
It's all or none, because it's a hit or miss with the way it was wired in there. You would have to wire out the whole entire community, or the whole entire downtown area.
But, one of the things I would suggest before we would say, well, that one's going to be expensive, we don't want to do it, I think we should walk through everything, because there may be things that you'd come back and say, this is worthwhile. We've looked at some other things, and maybe we'll change the prioritization, but maybe after several of your discussions, you'll say, maybe it's worth the money, staff. Go back and tell us what it's going to cost to rewire the downtown. So I don't want you to kick anything out early.
And although, certainly there's some decorating we could do beyond lighting, non-electrical things that perhaps, more than what we're doing now that would be,
Do we have an estimate?
the hall here looks very nice, and yet nothing's really plugged in, so.
Do we have an estimate, Paul, how much that would be?
We had not looked up anything. It's been so long since I looked, and that was not all the lighting. That was speakers at that point. So I don't have any cost.
Well, if we're talking about these things specifically, obviously the EDC started off with the number one for a reason. They put the signs indicating the free parking in Metro parking lots after 4 p.m. on weekdays and all day on the weekends, and to promote the free parking via the village newsletter, cable channel, Facebook page, and other media channels. I certainly think this is something we could be working on, and here again, talking more about getting the
just get it done.
Email communication to people and making sure that that's done. And as far as signs go for Metra, I don't know if we're going to have to get permission from Metra to put the signs actually on their premises, or how does that work? Do we?
As far as the parking, some of the parking is on there. We do rent the space from them, but it is all underneath our control for signage and for maintenance on that. So additional signage along the parking area would not be an issue.
So we could have some metal signs put up that just are big enough, like the street signs, that are big enough that that people could see it, and we could have several of them intermittently through the parking area?
Yeah, it's just a matter of where we want to place them. We'd have to come up with a plan on that and install the signs, sure.
Right.
But this
And
is
we do
something that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We do have a sign shop that we would be able to make these in-house. It would be material cost and our labor.
So easily done and easily placed, and something we could do immediately then.
We can check that one off.
Get it done.
That would be good.
Let's do that.
Did I read in this small little document also that if we asked Metra to use their digital sign, they had no problem with that, and we would be the first to ask them?
Tony explored that. Maybe Tony, you could...
Donna's shaking her head, so I think it's yes. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer, too.
Yeah, Mayor, they said we could call once these recommendations are finalized and the board moves forward deciding what they want to request of Metro, they would still want us to get in touch with them about that for their approval, but they indicated a willingness to in that particular.
Good, thank you, Tony.
Do other communities around us have free parking on the weekends at the metro stations? Do we know, or?
I believe that anybody that has Metro parking that's throughout the tracks, that once the commuters leave, then you get free park in there. Typically, it's like they always say after 4 o'clock.
Right.
But that's my understanding up and down the tracks.
Mayor, you just want to go in line then?
Yeah, let's do that. Standards boards placed at the 2 Metro platforms to promote local events. I mean, that doesn't seem too difficult as long as Metro's on board with it. I think the logistics of that could be complicated. What events do you promote? I know Chairman Ranky or Trustee Ranky has some issues with what would be on the signs, and we can get in some hot water there.
I think placement of those sandwich boards, they would not be able to be on the platform.
Yeah.
That is one thing Metro will not allow anything on the platform
It's gotta
itself.
be in-
It'd be down on the public sidewalk, further away from the platform.
So
but
like maybe a
easily
sign.
done.
Do we do that for our
The farmer's market.
farmers market
puts
now?
a
Yeah,
sign
so we're
out there.
already doing some of that. But
Right.
Other events.
Well, I think that was part of the talk, too, is having an organizational schedule so that we could say, this month we're having the farmer's market, or this, we're having the car show, and then you'd have something organized for whatever weeks, so you wouldn't have any sort of redundancy, and it wouldn't be something, unexpected, yeah. Exactly.
We already own the sandwich boards. Correct?
For the farmer's market, we put them up there.
But I mean, are they convertible, or they only say farmer's market on there?
The ones that we have designed strictly for the farmer's market for around
The
town.
sandwich boards, come on, what are we talking?
Right.
Again, my take.
You could work
do
with
it.
the different event coordinators and put those up. Heritage Days, Arts and Bartlett, those types of things.
And I'm sure Ms. Salmons can find an ideal candidate to be in charge of the sandwich boards. I bet you do.
And I'm sure we'll have a policy in place for what events we're going to publicize on the sandwich board.
That's the difficult.
So what I may be getting at is events fine, business promotions not fine.
In some respects, you got to ask for permission after you've been questioned, I think, in those situations.
I'm with you, Mayor.
Are we on number 3? Additional downtown events such as car shows, high schools. Is there any organizations, Arts and Bartlett, Historical Society, places like that we could, maybe staff could kind of, even the Bartlett High School and the local schools, Park District, what other events that you guys hold now would you like to try to figure out a way to have them downtown type of a thing? That's what I could see doing here, so it doesn't take up staff time and everything else. Maybe just say, okay, we're really looking for events. Maybe it's just a promotional idea through the village, coming out and saying, we really want to look at events happening in downtown area. Can you pinpoint something that we can do? I know we do the tree lighting, but maybe we can expound on that a little bit. I don't know. But that's where I was thinking on that, is trying to coordinate with Arts and Bartlett High School and everybody together to kind of say, okay, and maybe the folks that do the car shows out at Nicodino's, maybe you say, hey, you know what, we could throw a car show in town somewhere. So I know some of this stuff's going to be a lot of logistical follow-up, who's going to do what, but I would try to push that out to the community and maybe the Heritage Group and say, hey, let's try to figure out another event.
Well, normally the car shows are sponsored by some restaurant or organization or something that...
Your chiropractor?
It could be.
Well, they had a car show at the Heritage Days.
What's that?
They had a car show at the Heritage Days.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few people looking at the cars, and that was good to see.
They have it at the street dance, too. So.
Okay.
Car shows are, they're almost a breed to themselves. They're very successful. They're almost a breed to themselves. I was going to say, having intimate knowledge of putting something together downtown here, it is incredibly rewarding. For the people putting it on, again, it depends on the scope. If you're talking about something like the Heritage Days or the street dance, it takes a lot of legwork on the part of the organization putting it together. But I don't think they're necessarily talking all of them having to be necessarily quite that big. I guess my take on it would be it's more an issue of Tony or somebody like him reaching out to those organizations and saying, hey, why don't you do something in our downtown, and we'll help you here a little bit. We'll help you grease the wheels a little bit and move things along.
I think from experience with the chamber events, it takes years for people to get used to going to these things and going consistently. So it seems to me that it may make more sense and better time spent trying to tie off of one of the things that we already do, like the tree lighting, and then tie off additional things downtown after that. Just tie off or enhance something that people are used to going to already. But that's just a thought.
I imagine we may get some comments from our EDC members at the end of this, too.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I think we already talked about the wiring. We'll try to get a price on what it costs to rewire that.
Let me be clear on that, Mayor. Excuse me. One of the things we haven't done by design, I think, is that the staff has not started to cost out any of this. So if there's particular pieces you would like us to, I just need to be clear about that, and then we'll go ahead and do that due diligence. And I think you're saying relative to the whole downtown decorations, music, lighting, you would like that costed out.
Yeah,
Okay.
if costing it doesn't cost a lot.
Well, no, but it's going to be a pretty thorough project. I mean, we're going to look at it very carefully and make sure that we're not just, shooting from the hip relative to cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other additional functions of having the downtown rewired that you can think of, Paul? Like, is it problematic for anything else? Or would we just be doing this for holiday lights?
That would be there's no issues with the existing lighting there, lighting up the street lights. It would be the function of decoration, holiday decorations. That would be the sole purpose of the additional wiring, yes.
Easter egg hunt at night or something. I mean, you could use the lights for other things. That's an idea.
We're on to number 5, I believe, work with the Chamber of Commerce to hold a business expo for Metro commuters. I think that's pretty much up to the Chamber if they want to. I mean, we could try to team with them, but it's pretty much up to the Chamber if they want to do that. We try to help them promote it.
Would business people be interested in the early morning, or would it make more sense to have maybe in the afternoon, in the evening, on the weekends?
Apparently, from reading through the notes, the commuters are the happiest in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That was the discussion.
They're also the busiest.
I don't
mean,
think so. I think they're the happiest coming home.
Yes.
They have a different mindset.
But then they don't want to do anything, they just want to go home. That's the problem.
And having been a commuter, on the way down, there's no way I'm going to stop and go to some expo. Maybe we need to.
I don't know about the rest of your opinions. I think that one's kind of a red herring because everything else I read in this whole document says that, people are so busy they just want to get on the train, and then when they get off, they want to get off the train. One of the things that in the back of my mind that I thought would have been effective, especially when I see the number one thing during the survey when we took it was, why do you go downtown? The number one thing was restaurants. So the idea of starting this whole EDC investigation is similar to what you see in airports, like the Chili's to go. Just having our local restaurants kind of grab onto that Chili's to go type of an idea and have menus in the metro station and say, hey, we've got ready to go stuff. Before you get to your car, swing by. You're close enough. You're 2 or 3 restaurants within walking distance to your car. Grab your stuff and go. So
on the train.
Yeah, but I think the idea of having them stick around or come early is kind of a red herring. That's my opinion. So.
Number 6?
Yep. Have we ever investigated a television in the train station? I know these people are just in there.
We haven't, but it would be similar to what we have in the Village Hall, just advertising, the cable events. It would, again, we have a license agreement to operate the station. It shouldn't be that difficult to work through with Metro.
But you probably get Metro to give you some kind of safety videos that you can throw in there also. Unfortunately,
as long as you agree to run some train videos, they might very well pay for the flat screen.
Yeah. Yeah, they throw their advertisements up there. They just queue up one of their Metro advertisements once in a while, and they'll pay for it, I'm sure. There you go. That's a great idea.
Do we have the ability to generate content?
Pardon?
Like for public access television, do we have the ability to generate content? Like the cameras and all that kind of stuff?
To make like a commercial.
So like commercials and programming and
Do
things
we
like
have
that?
it here in the Village Hall?
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay.
We can print just
We
about
we
it.
use the cable people.
Right.
What do you think?
The only problem is that only 50% of the people are actually inside the station going into Chicago. The people on the westbound platform are nowhere near there.
And number 7 there, if they're suggesting that, so just so we don't confuse staff, can we just check in to see, and let us know how much it would cost to keep it ongoing and running? And just the television stuck up there. And then let's have somebody communicate with Metra and say, hey, if we queue up your Metra, Woof Woof Metra advertising every 5th or 6th one, and we have, by the way, you'll have shopping and stuff available downtown here, see what they say about that.
How long is our video loop average? 19 minutes before it repeats, or?
Depending on the time of year and the amount of time.
Like now?
About 20 minutes.
We may find Operation Lifesaver sometimes. Pockets of that. Not trying to make work for you cheap.
I think number 7, if we contacted Elgin Community College, we're probably going to come back and say, well, what do you want the end result to be? And I think that's kind of unknown right now. Might be a little premature, but certainly there's no harm to contact them and say, hey, we're looking for ways to enhance our downtown. Do you have a marketing team that is looking for a project?
I think that's something the EDC would probably bring in, work through that issue.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Do we also not know some people at Northern Illinois, maybe? Do we also not know some people at Northern Illinois?
Yeah, I heard we have some pull there, don't we?
We have some alumni from there, I believe.
Go Huskies. We could get them into a competition, and the best one wins a prize, like maybe a free ride on the historical train at Heritage Days or something.
I did want a keg. Very nice.
Seriously, that would be fun to have a competition between Elgin Community and NIU's marketing departments. So number 7 is improve the upkeep and maintenance of the Metro station. We'll know how much control we have over that.
Who does the cleaning?
We're working on that with our vendor in there that's going to be switching over to do the interior maintenance. We do it now with our people who clean the village hall.
Okay.
So I think that's, yeah.
And so the interior of the building, as we have a lease with Metro, the exterior of the building where they're having some concrete walls that are deteriorating, that's Metro's responsibility. The stair steps are Metro's. So a lot of it on the exterior is Metro's. We're taking care of. Our responsibility is the interior cleaning.
So do we have control over the times that building's open then, or not? So do we have control over the times that building is open?
When you're saying open, it's virtually open while there is a ticket agent on duty. So that we work that out with them, but Metro actually says it has to be open when they have a ticket agent there. And the coffee vendor follows that same suit, is there at the same time that the vendors are there, Monday through Fridays.
Has the vendor approached the village at all about having the building open so they could have longer hours to?
They've already extended it. When they first started opening up, they were only open till about 10 o'clock in the morning. Now they have extended that. Once in a while they try and stay open till noon. They just don't have the traffic on the trains. And they're not pulling local people. It's strictly just train traffic that they are. But they have extended their hours to try and expand that. They've also opened up on some of the times that we have events in the downtown area. So they've tried to expand. The coffee vendor has tried to expand with that also.
Okay.
All right, that's it. I think we already talked about CMAP, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in recap, yeah. Valerie, just so we kind of understand what we just discussed, because there's so many moving parts with this. Just so board is understanding what you guys are going to start doing on this, and the general public is understanding what we're going to do next. Can you kind of outline?
Yes. Let me summarize as I understand it.
Okay.
We went through a few of these early ones where I think we all agreed that we could move forward with some of the signs indicating the free parking and advertising that, putting it out there in some of our email blasts, the BART letter, and some of the things that we're doing. Sandwich boards, we were able to produce or make, and we can put those out on sidewalks advertising some of our big events that are coming along in the village. The third one talked about reaching out to existing places, the high school or car shows, trying to recruit some additional activity into downtown Bartlett, and certainly we can do that. And I think we're really through 4 without really any expense at all. 4, we talked about holiday decor, and that's one that we're going to cost out and give you some sense of what additional electricity would cost. However, as I think Trustee Shipman pointed out, additional decorations could be absent. We could do it without lights. I mean, it may not be what we would like, but still that might be an option, and we will look at that. We would work with the chamber to see when they thought a business expo might be appropriate. Maybe it's something that they have, just thinking it through, and we'll do that with them. They have sort of, some signs and some stations where people can kind of walk through, and they can do it in the morning and in the afternoon. It doesn't have to be manned by a lot of people, but I think that's a good thing to try, and I don't think that there's much downside to trying on that one, and we'll work with the chamber. The 5th one was getting a television screen over in the metro station that runs the kind of loop that we have now in our village hall, and see if we can't work with Metra to put some of their ads on it and have them pick up some of the cost. We talked about having some marketing plans for EDC and or NIU or both, and I think that's something that the EDC would want to start that project and bring them in and have some discussion. We talked about upkeep and maintenance of the metro station, indicating that we are working with the vendor to do some additional internal upkeep. The external is not a responsibility, but certainly we can be in better communication and push Metro on some of those external things that we think need to be done. And lastly, looking at applying for a CMAQ grant to see if there were some planning study around transit-oriented that we could take advantage of that would improve some of the issues. So I think that we have some pretty clear direction on all 9 of those.
I would say for the sandwich boards, see if they have any heavy duty. I mean, we don't want them blowing over in the wind left and right, especially during the winter. And along with the TV, maybe we go along the same lines, West Bartlett Road, eat Bartlett, shop Bartlett, play Bartlett. I mean, you could do, you don't have to do a commercial, just play Bartlett, and then, in between whatever piece we put on the TV.
Good idea.
Just reinforce subliminally.
2 things I would add. The CMAP, make sure we tie it into the traffic study to see if we can get some dough for paying for the traffic study that we were already tabling. So let them know that we're considering doing this. How could we tie in and pool our funds to get something really above and beyond?
But we won't get traffic studies out of CMAP. They plan.
No.
Okay. But just to tell them we're looking at the broader issue.
Broader issue. That would be good. And another one is, I think we're short-sighted if we just say Christmas lights. I think the Arts in Bartlett is such a fantastic organization. Create a platform of downtown decorations around every holiday that people would want to come see. And it doesn't have to be lit up, just a platform of downtown.
But specifically what you're asking us to do is cost the ability to put in electricity to facilitate all of those kinds of things.
Sure.
And that's what we'll do.
Yep. And I know Cecilia's here, so maybe we can try to see if we can figure out a game plan to, I think it'd be really neat to have Bartlett known downtown as, wow, you got to go down and see the Easter decorations that they have, or Christmas, or Hanukkah, or whatever it is. Just decorations, and if you have that over and over, and you've got enough of them, and it becomes an anomaly where people want to go down and see what, in a different season, what it looks like downtown, that's That's low-hanging fruit to me. It's really inexpensive.
Just get decorations you can use over and over.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Cost-effective.
Yep. Just like the polar bears we used to have, or whatever those were. I'm done.
I see at least, I think, 5 of our EDC members, so.
Yes, we have several of our commissioners. in the
Recognize them and say thank you for their work. And
Well done.
Also, unless you object, if any of them have anything to kind of dovetail onto what we said, or we missed the point on one of those items, I guess this would be a good time to.
Even though we said you couldn't speak, we will give you an opportunity. Here. What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Celia or Donna? Or
I guess
Etta?
my take on it, too, is I want to make sure we didn't misinterpret something that you had written there, or that we were making something that wasn't, or if you do have some additional comment that we missed or feel is germane.
I think the exciting part about the board here is we really want to try to get some activity going right away and get some things implemented, and then these other things are going to be more than likely, from what I'm reading, on the capital improvements budget and stuff. Some of those things, some of those ideas are fantastic.
They are. Bravo to
well
all
done.
of you, really. Job well done.
You all finished, Chairman Cameron?
Cecilia has something.
Oh. Okay. Great, thanks, Celia.
So we're just going to continue with this on at another meeting, then, I'm assuming.
The rest of the information, I think we'll move on.
I think we'll just put it on the next committee agenda unless you have an objection to that, but we'll keep running through it.
Okay, sounds good.
We've
All right.
given you enough to gnaw on for a couple of weeks.
That being said,
Yeah.
we'll continue the discussion at the next committee meeting, and I have nothing else.
Thank you, Chairman Cameron. If there's nothing else we could do, order, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Cameron, seconded by Trustee Martin. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Cameron,
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Shipman.
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned.